The cinema starts in 1979. Joe Lamb, a 14-year-old boy living in the fictional town of Lillian, Ohio, has lost his mother, Elizabeth Lamb, in an accident at the town's steel factory. Although their family and friends are sad for her husband, Deputy Jackson Lamb, their main worry is Joe Lamb, who was fonder to his mom than his dad, who was never really been there for his son. Louis Daynard comes to the wake, but Joe's father, Deputy Jackson Lamb, blames Daynard for his wife's death since she stayed to cover his shift at the factory while Daynard was drunk and takes Daynard away in handcuffs. 4 months later, the local middle school lets out for the summer. Joe's friend Charles has been shooting a Super 8 film for a film festival in Cleveland. Charles has rewritten the story so that the detective now has a wife. Joe is unsure about this last-minute rewrite, but when Charles says him that he has gotten Alice Daynard for the part, he becomes less concerned. The two then promise to date later that night to film their scene, with plans for Alice to drive them. Later, Jackson takes Joe out for dinner. Jackson wants his son to attend a baseball camp for the summer, but Joe tells that he needs to help Charles finish his film. Both reach an impasse, having little more to say on the matter. Later that night, Joe goes to meet Charles and the rest of their crew, Carrie, Preston, and Martin. When Alice shows up in her dad's Buick Skylark, she's concerned that the deputy's son knows she's driving without a license. Joe promises not to tell, and Alice allows him along for the ride. The group come to the Lillian train station, where Charles intends to shoot a scene with Martin as the detective of his story, trying to get his wife to leave because of a zombie infection. Joe is smitten with Alice, who shocks the guys when during the rehearsal, she delivers a performance that brings her to tears. The boys are snapped out of their shock by the sound of an approaching train. Charles demands they start filming again as soon as possible so they can put the train into their film and increase the production value. As they film the scene of the train thundering past the station, Joe catches sight of a white truck turning onto the tracks. The truck hits the train, causing a massive explosive and derailment. The gang runs for shelter, and luckily survive the ordeal. Joe hears something pounding loudly on one of the derailed train cars right before the door flies off. Surveying the wreckage, they come across some strange white cubes. Then Joe takes one, and they find out the wreckage of the truck. Inside, they find the body of one of their local science teacher, Dr. Woodward. Alice removes a map from the doctor's hand. Everyone is shocked after he starts talking to them. Pulling a gun, he threatens them and tells them that they are not to tell anyone what they saw. Suddenly, the sound of men approaching the wreck catches their attention. Fearful of being caught, they recover Charles's Super 8 camera and quickly drive off. In the car, everyone is panicked about what just happened, and Alice says her coming was a mistake. Analysis of the camera the next day discloses that the lens is broken. However, Charles and Joe drop off the film for development. Joe insists he will help Charles finish the film, giving his dad's video camera. However, Charles believes that Alice will most likely not want to help them after the night before. Joe goes over to Alice's house to convince her to help them finish the film. Their conversation is disturbed by the arrival of Alice's father, Louis Daynard. He demands that Joe stay away from the family's home, and Alice looks like that her father is somewhat drunk. She agrees to help Joe and his friends. The gang then goes out to the scene of the train crash, this time using it as background for their filming. During the filming, Joe notices that the train features Air Force insignia. Later at a restaurant, he checks the map that Dr. Woodward had in his possession, noting a red line drawn in, snaking across the country. The group is still unclear why Woodward did what he did, but some are of the persuasion it was a failed suicide attempt. In the meantime, Jackson has come to the train wreck site looking for answers. However, none of the cleanup crew or their superior, General Nellick, is not willing to tell him anything, other than the cargo and cleanup is not dangerous. Jackson notes the government men picking up strange little white cubes and making plaster casts of some tire tracks in the ground. The next day, the town became a state of emergency, as Sheriff Pruitt goes missing. His wrecked vehicle is found near a gas station, with its windows smashed in and the attendant also missing. Jackson also receives reports of missing people, dogs, and electrical equipment. Even though some report missing household items like microwaves, the oddest thing are missing electrical lines and engines straight out of vehicles. Jackson quickly grows concerned when the military begins to roll into Lillian. Still not receiving answers as to their presence in the town, he gets word from one of the residents about a radio frequency that seems to be picking up military transmissions. Jackson has the other officers tune their radios into the frequency, and soon hears word of something codenamed Operation Walking Distance. Soon after hearing the transmission, Jackson meets Alice's father, Louis, who says Jackson to keep Joe away from Alice. Upset at hearing this, Jackson tracks down Joe and takes back his movie camera as well. Jackson finds the military moving stuff out of Dr. Woodward's home. Finding General Nellick at the site, Jackson again demands answers. When he does not get any, he mentions Operation Walking Distance. This affects Nellick to agree to meet with Jackson later on that evening at a nearby airfield. Taking Joe home, Jackson demands that Joe keep away from the Daynards, but Joe claims that Alice is not like her father and that she is nice. The two once again reach a wordless impasse before Jackson storms out of the house. Joe heads over to the cemetery after this, where he sits at the headstone of his mother's grave. While there, he hears some loud scraping and noises coming from a garage near the tombstones. Jackson then drives to the airfield to meet with General Nellick, only to be placed under arrest and locked away. In a military hospital, General Nellick investigates Dr. Woodward. He avoids to answer him, so then he poisoned to death. Joe is returning to his room later on. He is surprised when Alice comes. As they sit and talk, Alice asks Joe about the locket she's seen him carrying around. He claims it belonged to his mother, and they regained it after her accident. Alice also finds Joe has a projector set up, and sees he has been watching home movies of his mom from when he was younger. Alice tells Joe that she is sorry for the pain her dad caused, and senses he really is not all bad. Joe tells that he also does not feel any ill will towards her dad, when their attention is drawn to the strange white cube Joe picked up at the crash site. As they watch, it begins to vibrate, before shooting through a nearby wall, leaving a hole behind. Alice then goes home, only to find her father drunk and smoking in their living room. Disgusted by her father's behavior, she rushes out and gets on her bike. Lewis drunkenly follows in his car, but ends up hitting it. As Alice is unsure what to do, as she turns to see a large creature that causes her to scream. Lewis efforts to get out of his wrecked car, but finds Alice and the creature gone. Nellick orders flamethrowers to start a wildfire as an excuse to evacuate the residents to the base. The next day, Joe and Charles go to pick up the developed Super 8 film, but Charles is rather upset and angry towards Joe. When they finally get to Joe's place and watch the film, Charles tells that he is upset that Joe and Alice seem like to be getting along and liking each other. The reason Charles cast Alice in the film was because he actually liked her. As they look at the film, their point of view become turned when they see parts of a strange creature emerging from one of the wrecked train cars. As they surprise what it was they just saw, air raid sirens begin to go off. They run outside to find out the town being evacuated, with everyone being asked to report to the local military base. Word is that a dangerous fire is headed towards Lillian, and could cause terrible damage if it reaches the town's chemical plant. Joe and Charles get on a bus and are transported to the base. There, Charles is brought together with his family, while Joe goes to look for his dad. However, he instead finds Lewis, who states Joe that he saw Alice being taken away by a creature, but nobody believes him. Joe then rounds up Charles and their friends, with the intending to get back into town and rescue Alice. Bribing the town's camera store owner to help them, he succeeds to get them into town. They first go to the middle school. Dr. Woodward had a personally padlocked storage area behind the school where he hid confiscated items from his class. Joe believed that there may be additional information relating to his past, and the group discovers numerous films, tapes, and records stored in there as well, that could help them find out more about the creature and how to possibly defeat it. They then breaking into the school, they use a film projector in one of the classrooms. Through the materials, they learn that the creature is underground operation, and mainly wants to just go home. However, General Nellick was more intent on keeping the creature for army purposes. They also found its ship contained technology that when disassembled, shattered into the little white cubes that the group saw at the crash site. Due to Woodward's communications with the creature, he was able to gain a telepathic link to it, and notes in his findings that due to the hostilities directed towards it, it has grown hostile in nature to humans as well. The boys soon hear noises in the school, and are soon found by Nellick and his men. The group take away the items, as well as Joe's mom's locket. The boys are put on a military bus and are headed back to the base when the creature attacks the bus. The boys be able to escape while the creature attacks the other military officers and kills General Nellick. In the aftermath, Joe is able to obtain his mom's locket. Meanwhile, Jackson has succeeded to escape his captors, and after creating a diversion, gets to the other base where the residents are being kept. He finds one of Joe's friends there, and after hearing of Joe's plans to rescue Alice, catches her father and takes him along. On their journey to the town, Lewis describes that he came to the Lamb's house after the funeral to apologize. Jackson also admits that he knows that Lewis is sorry, and quietly forgives him. The boys, meanwhile, have made it back into town, but suddenly find themselves in the middle of a war zone. as tanks and other military weaponry are going haywire, firing random shots and destroying property. As the boys attempt to escape, Martin is wounded. Charles stays behind to tend to his wounds, as Joe and Carrie rush off to the cemetery. Joe tells Carrie about the strange things he saw and heard from the garage. Breaking down a door, they discover a large hole, dug down several stories deep. Climbing down, they see it leads up to several other places. Ultimately, they come across the creature's lair under the town's water tower, which houses all sorts of mechanical parts, including the missing items from the residents. As they watch, they see several people pass through from the ceiling, including the missing sheriff, as well as Alice. Before they can rescue her, they catch a glimpse of the creature, who is eating the limb of another human. Fearful that Alice might be next, Joe leads Carrie to create a distraction using the fireworks in his backpack. This affects the distraction that Joe needs as the creature heads down the tunnel towards the loud sounds. Joe succeeds to save Alice, as well as the sheriff and a lady with rollers in her hair. As they rush to find a way out, they come across Carrie, who thought he was heading towards an exit. Suddenly, the creature comes up behind them, grabbing the sheriff and the other lady into the darkness. Joe, Alice, and Carrie run but are soon at a dead end. The creature has them cornered, but Joe stands before it, reasoning with it. The creature acts hostile at first, but even in the face of its bizarre appearance, Joe does not react hostilely like the previous treatment it has known. Suddenly, a sound is heard deep in the cave near the creature's lair, and it puts Joe down and return back. The three return to the surface and assemble near the water tower. As they do, all sorts of mechanical objects in the area become magnetized to the water tower's top area. Truck trailers nearby that also contain the recovered white cubes burst open, and the cubes begin to form around the edges of the water tower as well. During the spectacle, Jackson and Lewis come across their children, and both families reunite as the creature ascends the water tower. As they watch, the locket in Joe's pocket attempts to fly away. Joe catches it, and we see what was inside it the whole time. A picture of Joe's mom and him as a baby. Joe finally lets go of his mom, and the locket flies up to the magnetized water tower, where the metallic objects and the white cubes morph into a spaceship. The creature climbs aboard, as the top of the water tower disappears, raining down its watery contents on the people below. Everyone watches as the ship ascends into the sky. As they do, Joe and Alice hold each other's hands. They and their families have reunited over their past differences. End of the movie. We see that Charles has completed his movie, titled The Case. The Super 8 film involves of a detective investigating a rash of zombie appearances that seem linked to a company called Romero Chemicals. The head of the company denies any wrongdoing, but the detective feels something is amiss. He attempts to send his wife away to keep her safe, but she refuses. While at the train station, they witness a train derailment. The detective soon meets a doctor who has an antidote to the zombie disease, but only enough for one person. As he tries to administer it to a captured zombie, the detective watches as the zombie bites the doctor. After killing the zombified doctor, the detective returns home, only to discover his wife has become a zombie. He stabs her in the neck with the antidote. It looks that it has not worked, and he gets ready to kill his wife. However, suddenly she returns to normal, and the two hug. A final shot shows Charles in a suit and smoking a pipe, thanking the audience for watching, and seeing them for the Cleveland Film Festival. Before Alice pops into frame in her zombie makeup, horrifying the camera lens. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe our channel for more videos and movies. Hit like and share your comments.